Um, with that, I want to dive right in, and I want these gentlemen to kind of introduce themselves. And so I want to start with Dr. Paul.
All right. Well, my name is Dr. Paul Thomas. I'm a family medicine physician. I went to Wayne State University School of Medicine, so I'm a local guy, and I practice here in Corktown, Detroit, at 1620 Michigan Avenue, the corner, which is Michigan and Trumbull. Um, and it's been a great spot for us. Our practice is called Plum Health, and we do a membership model for healthcare. I've been doing my best to read every day about coronavirus and the risks, what's all involved, and I hope to bring a wealth of information to this conversation about the science and data behind what coronavirus is, what the vaccine is, and how it can help prevent you from getting coronavirus, and then the complications of coronavirus, like post-coronavirus syndrome, which is COVID long hauler. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sweet, thank you. Joe, let's go with you next.
All right, my name's Joseph Yaksich. I'm an acute care nurse practitioner. I've been in medicine, we're going on about 20 years now. I started as an EMT and a paramedic, registered nurse. I went on and got my acute care nurse practitioner, and then I'm currently working on a PhD in general psychology. So I bring that up because it helps me to understand, how the studies are performed. I'm trained in how to perform studies, statistics, numbers, things like that. So I think it's helpful when we come to the conversation. And I also work as a hospitalist in Jackson, Michigan, and I've been working the COVID units since this all started rolling out last year. So I've been rotating through. So I have firsthand experience in the hospital of what this thing looks like and what it's doing to people.
Very cool. Thank you, sir. Mike.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? I'm Michael South. I'm a clinical lab scientist. I've actually been doing this particular job for 35 plus years. I was in healthcare a little before that, and unbelievably for more years, doing other things and connected with the lab. However, I've been doing this job for that long. I'm working with COVID every single day at the hospital. The lab is seeing all the changes as they happen. This is a very new thing. So it's understandable that people have a lot of can have intrepidation about it, but as information comes in and changes, we want to try and keep everybody up to date as much as possible and give you the best that we have at the time. And right now, the best chances I think that we have at this time is these vaccines that are available, and I'm more than willing to help with any information that I may have to ease your concerns.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. So listen, um, let's kick it off. So and maybe we start here, and I'd like to hear all of you all chime in. Um, like there is trepidation around this vaccine, right? And so people don't want to get it. And so I know all three of you have had it. And so starting there and maybe working backwards a little bit, what is the one or two things that you three would say to somebody who says, I don't know about that, right? Like, you know, we know historically amongst African Americans, this country experimented on African Americans, right, with vaccines, and some horrible stuff kind of went down. And then let's be very honest, right? A lot of this rolled out with the last administration, which a lot of African Americans don't particularly trust, right? And so, what do you guys say to dissuade that? And so I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Thomas. Give me that 1 or 2 point deal.
Yeah, well, first, I would just want to validate trepidation that people may have, and just being completely honest and transparent. We, as the medical community, have experimented on African American folks in our dark history. Up until 1974 was the Tuskegee study. It was an experiment where people who had syphilis were just monitored, not treated, and to see what would happen. So, that being said, we've come a long way as a medical community from our darker past. And I think that the vaccine has been made in full transparency by private companies. For example, the Pfizer vaccine is made by a German company that really had nothing to do with Operation Warp Speed under the Trump administration. It's been validated by several different bodies, including the Food and Drug Administration in the United States that has independent leadership. The vaccine has been proven to be safe and effective, just like all of the vaccines that we currently use. And just a little bit of the science behind the vaccine. When you're getting the vaccine, you're getting a little bit of genetic information that helps make a protein that protects you from the COVID-19 virus. So it's important to acknowledge the past while moving forward with the best information possible. And at this time, I've received the vaccine. I've received both doses. My wife, who's a veterinarian, who's exposed to people through her job, her office has gotten the vaccine. My grandfather, who is a 94-year-old man, my grandmother, who's 93, who reside in a nursing home, they've received the vaccine. My mom has received the vaccine. She's a nurse practitioner. I wholeheartedly recommend the vaccine to all of my family members and all of my friends and all of my patients who want to protect themselves from this virus.
Thank you. Joe or Mike, I'll let you guys, fight amongst each other to chime in.
Go ahead, Mr. South.
Well, thank you, Joe. And to put a point on it too, I also I've taken both vaccines. I had the Pfizer vaccine. I had both doses already. Very minimal, if any, side effects. Maybe a sore arm for a while, or a slight cold the second time around. Very small side effects. Anyway, hitting on something Dr. Paul also just mentioned about. Remember, I understand the hesitation people can have. People have come to me with questions about, well, what about the Tuskegee thing, and what about this, that, and the other thing, and they're valid concerns. I understand that, but remember, these vaccines have been validated by an independent data safety and monitoring board that are not federal employees. It was not controlled by federal employees. Where Joe is, his hospital, where he is, and they actually had a hand in checking out the Pfizer vaccine, and the Wake Forest University Hospital here in North Carolina actually had a hand in evaluating the data from the study for the Moderna vaccine. So please don't feel that there's somebody trying to put something over your eyes and say, hey, we're doing something behind the scene and whatever. I had one person come and ask me, and to them it's a very valid question because that's what their concern was. But they said, well, are they giving one vaccine to Black people and one vaccine to white people? And that's not the case at all. And if you ever seen a site that actually has a vaccination site, you'll see that they go in. You get a lot number of vaccine. You thaw that vaccine at that time if that happens to be one that is frozen, and they actually give out that lot number with the vaccine that you get, and it's given out indiscriminately, whether it's Black, white, color, any color you can think of on the rainbow. So it's not individualized to any kind of ethnic group. So. But please, if you have concerns, I believe your concerns are valid because they're valid to you. And you should really bring up those concerns. If you have a valid question about it, bring them forward and ask someone. But I feel that these vaccines are safe. Again, I'll mention, I'm speaking mainly of right now, the Pfizer and the Moderna. Johnson & Johnson is going to be on the scene very soon. It's going through some approvals. It's going through some data checking itself right now. There's other vaccines that are on the conveyor belt waiting to come along as well. But right now, what we have out there, I have confidence in them. And I think it is, especially for people of color who are dying at 2.9% at a higher rate than other races, I really feel this is important that you understand that this is a safe vaccine and it is worth you having it.
Joe, before you dive off into yours, you guys mentioned something the last time that we did this, and I'm gonna ask you to piggyback on that. When you talked about when you guys talked about the rates at which death takes place if you get the actual vaccine versus not getting it, right? So go ahead and dive in. Forgive me. So just pick that up after you.
All right. Mike had those numbers, so I'll punt it back to Mike. But I too got both vaccines already. I got it from Pfizer. On a personal level, I felt like I was putting on a bulletproof vest after I got that second one. That's how serious this thing is. I actually felt a little bit of anxiety leave my body about a week after, because I knew that I was at full protection from these vaccines. So it's kind of eased my mind a little bit, to tell you the truth. And we talk about, a little bit about how these studies come about and how they roll out the vaccine. I just want to piggyback on that. As a scientist, in order to do research on people, you have to go through an independent review board that has to approve these things. And before they can even get to people, they have to show the efficacy in animal studies and things like that. So even just as a psychologist, to be able to talk to people, I have to submit my proposal that gets looked over by a panel of experts. They tell me what they like, what they don't like. I have to have safeguards. Even if I'm just going to like a college to speak to students, it's a very lengthy process. Now, in order to put something into people, the process is so much more. They have to just prove so much safety. When they did the Pfizer study, they rolled it out on 30,000 people. That's not a small number. So some people are a little hesitant, like, well, it just came around so fast. Well, it's developed fast, and usually what happens is they when they're testing a vaccine, you might have like 1 or 2 sites, and it takes a year or two, or any kind of medicine, as they're testing it, they're collecting data. Well, what happened with the Pfizer vaccine and the other vaccines, Moderna, is that they had so many sites that they were able to get it to a lot of people and enroll a lot of people in these massive studies. So before it even became approved for people use, they had 30,000 people that took it, and they looked at the side effects for that.
So you're saying under normal circumstances, before a vaccine is rolled out, they pick 1 or 2 sites, period, and then they do a couple of years study on that.
Right.
But
depending on the on what it is, the medicine, you have somebody that develops this new drug, then they partner with a few health systems and they roll it out, and it takes a while to collect enough participants to really study that. Well, where the speed came from this was the massive amount of people they were able to enroll to get the data from. So that's kind of how part of the reason why the speed was there, is because they just had access to a lot of people to test it on and to see what was going on and make sure that it was safe.
And one of those sites was here in Detroit. So I had patients who were a part of that participation. I think the Moderna vaccine, correct me if I'm wrong, had a clinical trial out of Henry Ford Hospital. And so I had a lot of patients who applied for that, and I had a few patients who actually got that. And they took the vaccine, and one patient had some fatigue after the second dose. And so that patient said, I think I didn't get the placebo, I think I got the real vaccine. And then later it was revealed to him that he didn't in fact get the vaccine. So, these are people in our community who have gone ahead and volunteered and kind of put their bodies, quote unquote, at risk for science, the scientific procedure, and have come out with good results. And I need to reiterate that this vaccine is nearly 99% effective in stopping death from the coronavirus. So it's extremely effective. It's a modern day miracle that this drug has been created, and you have a real opportunity to prevent death and also side effects from getting the virus itself. Sorry to jump in there.
No, that's good.
Jumping in on the same strain that you're on there. Since we're talking about the numbers, real quick,
Mike.
Hold
on, Mike. Let me say this. If anybody has questions, please put them in the chat. I want to take this opportunity. Anybody that has, if you have questions, please type them in the chat. We have everybody muted, and you will not be able to unmute yourself, right? So any questions that you have, make sure you put them in the chat so that we can ask them and address them before we are done. Sorry about that, Mike. Go ahead.
No problem. I was just going to piggyback also on the numbers, since we were mentioning about those numbers, and like Dr. Paul was mentioning about the rate of death with these things. I want people to remember. You may have heard of a lot of numbers thrown around. We had with the Pfizer's, they came out. They were like 94 efficacy rate against getting infection, and the Moderna was 95 or so percent. Both of them very high. And you may have heard about the Johnson & Johnson coming out. It's the one-shot vaccine, and they're saying it's around 70% against getting infection. I want you to understand about these numbers. Even though that Johnson & Johnson is at about 70% efficacy rate of getting infected, it's about 80 to 90% effective from you getting a serious disease, and nearly 100% effective from death. And that's the point we want to make, that all of these vaccines are very, very, very effective against possible death from this virus. So it's the same with the Pfizer and the Moderna. They have nearly 100% effective rate against deaths. And of course, it decreases serious illness, but against death, we have a lot of people dying that are people of color, and I'm telling you that these vaccines all will be effective against this virus towards that effort. I'm sorry. Now you can continue, Joe, before we cut you off.
No, that's good. I don't want to ramble either. So back to the just the study. So there's trepidation about the prior administration, but just keep in mind that the people that have created these vaccines, and I said it during the last talk, they don't work for the administration like Dr. Thomas brought up. These are people that have devoted their lives. These scientific researchers who have spent at least 10, 12 years just learning how to become a researcher. So they've devoted their lives to science, and they're not going to let anybody roll something out and trash their work. There's a lot of trepidation with pharmaceutical company CEOs too, and like, oh, they're just going to ram it through. But the scientists in the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of control and power, because if the pharmaceutical company ran something out that wasn't good, and they could find somebody in the company said, yeah, I told them it wasn't good, could you imagine the devastation of the company? They would just, the lawsuits would totally bankrupt them. So in a business sense, it's bad business to do something like that. But then even so, there's another check and balance with the FDA, where it's an independent panel of physicians who look at all the data. So they say, okay, here's the stuff from the company. They look at the studies. Usually the studies are going to what's called a peer-reviewed journal as well, which means that a panel of experts look at the study, agree to publish it, and then it goes out into the scientific community, the doctors, and then they all independently look at the study. So there's a lot of people just scrutinizing these things, especially with how fast it came out. Then it goes through the FDA, and the FDA has a panel of experts that looks at it, and then says, yes, I think it's safe to go out. And the FDA is actually very conservative on what they let out. There's drugs in Europe that Europe has been using for years that the FDA won't let out. And sometimes you hear about that in the news, is because they're just not convinced about it yet. So they really do a good job. They do a really good job of making sure that, they keep things kind of in check. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I think the FDA's safety standards are really high, and it's oftentimes can stifle new drugs from getting out of the market, drugs that might be helpful for people. Some American consumers, let's say with a rare condition like cystic fibrosis or sarcoidosis or something like this, they're saying, why doesn't the FDA approve these medications when other consumers in Canada or Europe can buy them? And so I think the FDA has a really high bar. And I think we're seeing that with these vaccines. It's been amazing that they've been approved. I think that speaks to the scientific rigor and the effectiveness and safety profiles of these vaccines.
Linson, once again, guys, I want you to take this opportunity to introduce yourselves again. We got some more people into the room, and we want folk to know who you are. So let's take a station identification break real quick. Mike, let's start with you.
Again, my name is Michael South. I'm a clinical lab scientist as well as the co-vice president of MAPP. I've been a clinical lab scientist for over 35 years now, so I'm working closely every day with COVID in the lab.
All right, Dr. Paul.
Yep, Dr. Paul Thomas. I'm a family medicine physician. I did my training here in Detroit at Wayne State University School of Medicine. I'm a good friend of Mr. Sean Lee, an excellent photographer, and I'm really happy to be here to help people understand what COVID is and how the vaccines can help you prevent contracting COVID.
All right, thank you. And while we're here, somebody asked if you could either turn up your mic or speak directly into it. That they're having problems, a little difficulty hearing you.
Okay, is that better?
Much better. Yeah, and Joe.
I'm Joseph Yaksich. I'm an acute care nurse practitioner. I've been in the medical field for about 20 years, and I work with COVID patients in the hospital since this rolled out as a hospitalist, among some other things that I'm doing. And there's a couple good questions in the chat too, if you want to hop on those, Sean.
I got some questions here that were sent to me ahead of time. And I'm going to ask all three of them because I think all three of them deal with side effects of some sort, right? And so these questions are from Elena Harris. Is there any specific evidence or data that there will not be any adverse effects of this vaccine in the future? Question number one, and they may go together, so I'm going to read all three before you all answer. Such as unknown side effects or allergic reactions months after receiving the vaccine? How will this vaccine affect individuals with autoimmune diseases or disorders, such as celiac disease, Graves' disease, multiple sclerosis, lupus, or stuff like fibromyalgia?
Okay, so speaking real quick on my side, as far as side effects go and what we can actually show are related to the vaccine. The CDC keeps a website, a database of all side effects that occur with this vaccine. If you want to check for yourself, go to cdc.gov and look for the vaccine adverse event reporting system. But remember that all things that happen after you get a vaccine is necessarily because of the vaccine. There was a doctor who had taken some vaccine and had passed, and everybody said, oh, he took the vaccine, so he died, but then he had a rare blood disorder. That, of course, this study could not encompass all rare blood diseases or all rare conditions that someone may have. So just like it's not exactly recommended for pregnant women right now and young children because there wasn't enough time to encompass everyone in that study. So as such, it's not recommended, but at the same time, you have to understand that not everything could be checked prior to. So it can't be promised, I think, necessarily that nobody will have any side effect whatsoever, but it can be said that you can draw a correlation that we have seen that people who normally have allergies to previous vaccines like the flu vaccine aren't having the same sort of allergic reaction to this vaccine because of the way that it's manufactured is different. There's a process called mRNA, which we're using the messenger RNA that's being used now, is different process to making a vaccine than it used to be in the past. So there are some lessened allergic reactions because of that, but they can't, as far as I know, be promised to cover everybody that you'll never have a sniffle afterwards. But anybody else can speak to that?
Yes, I'll speak to that for a moment. So to pick up on, I am treating patients every day in my clinic. I'm at Plum Health in Corktown, and the most common question I have among people with pre-existing conditions is, will this affect me? And so for pregnant women, let's start there. The American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists, or doctors who take care of pregnant women, they recommend that vaccines should not be withheld from pregnant individuals who meet criteria for vaccination. So basically, pregnant women should get vaccinated. I work with women in the medical profession. I have some physician colleagues who are pregnant currently, and they've waited until their second trimester to get vaccinated. So basically, they waited 14 weeks, the critical phase for growth and development for the baby. And so then once they got in their second trimester, they started getting the vaccine. So I've seen that practice play out. I have a patient who has sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune condition, and we had a conversation today about it. And the rheumatology board recommends that patients with sarcoidosis get the vaccine, as long as they're not taking monoclonal antibody immunotherapy. And even then, they can still have it, just that the monoclonal antibodies may interfere with the effectiveness, not that the vaccine will be less, will cause any adverse effects. And so because we've had so many people participate in these vaccine trials who are over the age of 16, over the age of 18, we've seen that it's been very effective across a very broad and diverse group of people. And I think that your risk of side effects is lower. And just as was said before, the flu vaccine is made in a chicken egg, right? So people who have egg allergies tend to have allergic reactions to the flu vaccine. But for the COVID vaccine, it's made in a different process. It's like a synthetic vaccine. So you don't have those allergens baked in with the vaccine this time around, which is leading to fewer adverse effects. And the question they talked about, can you have an allergic reaction months later? No, you can't. Allergic reactions happen within 15 minutes of getting a vaccine. It's like if you have a bee sting and you have an allergy, it's going to happen within 30 seconds or a minute or a few minutes. It's not going to happen 2 or 3 months later. That's just not how our immune systems work.
Right. And the tag on that too. So, people are worried about having reactions to the vaccine. So there's a couple different reactions, right? There's the allergic reaction that we're talking about. And it can be, people are allergic to different things. Some people, you give them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you're going to kill them. So being allergic to something just means that your body doesn't like it. So if I'm putting an injection in, whether it's a vaccine or morphine or an antibiotic, sometimes our bodies just don't like that. And they'll go into different kinds of allergic reactions. That's why after you get the vaccine, they have you sit there and you wait to make sure that you're not going to be allergic to any of the ingredients. So what are ingredients in the vaccine? It's all things that are designed to keep that mRNA kind of suspended and stable. So it's different chemicals, right? So everyone's like, oh, chemicals. I don't want chemicals in my body. When you're thinking as a scientist, you have to think that everything is chemicals. This bottle of water is H2O. That's a chemical. So when we say that there's chemicals in things, your chemicals, everything is chemicals. So don't fear the fact that they're putting chemicals in, because everything's a chemical in the scientific community. So I think people kind of get a little nervous about that as far as, what goes in. And it's a small amount. It's a 0.5 milliliter, which is a really tiny amount going in. So that's kind of the allergic reaction part. Some people talk about when they get the flu vaccine, oh, it made me sick. I got a fever and I got chills. And well, yeah, that's good. And the reason why it's good is it's producing an immune response, which is what you want. You want to be able to, you want your body to have some kind of response, which means that it's working. So I think we have to go back a little bit and like, what is a vaccine? How does that work? So in very general terms, when you put a vaccine in your body, what it's doing is it's exposing you to a piece of a protein or a weakened virus that lets your immune system recognize it and go to work. When your immune system recognizes, let's say, a cold virus, and you get a cold, your immune system starts fighting it. And to prevent it from happening in the future, your immune system creates what's called antibodies. And the antibodies are floating around your body. In case that virus comes back, it'll recognize it and have a response. that's a very generalized description of what we're doing with these vaccines. So instead of you actually getting it, which we don't want you to get it, it gives you a way to produce those antibodies so that if you do get the virus, it's already got your soldiers in there ready to beat down the virus. So, you know, it could prevent you from getting it, or if you do get it, it lessens the severity of it. And Dr. Thomas, I'd love for you to tack on too, if you can think of anything that I missed.
No, I think that's a good summary. I mean, you know, if you read all the chemicals that are in your blood, you'd be aghast. But you know, you'd see all these things that you don't understand. But it comes down to that we're all composed of different elements, and I, you know, it just goes to show that, you know, this the scientific community has put a lot of effort and energy into making this vaccine work really well, and this novel technology that we've used, this mRNA vaccine, is really a modern marvel. Just giving a little bit of a messenger RNA, and your body takes that mRNA and encodes a protein that helps your body recognize the COVID vaccine just by the spike protein. So it's really an interesting and ingenious way to vaccinate people.
So I don't want to jump into, I don't want to jump into a whole bunch of stuff, right? There's stuff out there. So Linda says that VAERS. Are you guys familiar with that? VAERS.
That was what I just mentioned about on the CDC government website that keeps a database on the vaccine adverse event reporting system is called VAERS.
It's called VAERS. All right. So she said that they've reported 400 vaccine deaths and over 10,000 serious side effects. Can anybody speak to that, or what that means, or give scale to that?
Sure, and I'll talk a little bit about where this information is coming from. So when I got my vaccine, they gave me a little QR code that I scanned and I put it in my phone. And every day it would text me and ask me about my symptoms and side effects. So this is actually kind of an interesting vaccine, because, or way they're rolling this out, is because they're collecting a mass amount of data from everybody that gets these shots. So if I have a sniffle, I put it in, it goes into the database. So they're collecting that. I haven't seen the vaccine deaths. Can people die from the vaccine if there's an allergic reaction? I think absolutely, but those are right away and immediate, like Dr. Thomas says. So I don't know. I can't speak to the vaccine associated deaths and what a serious side effect is. So I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay,
Don't know what the definition of a serious side effect is.
Okay, speaking of VAERS, also remember it tracks all adverse reactions. It does not necessarily mean that we're related to the vaccine. So in other words, you could get the vaccine and next week you had a car accident. You did. That had to be reported. It's on that VAERS. It's something that happened after he's gotten the vaccine. It's something, so it's any adverse thing that happens to you after this vaccine. It's not necessarily linked specifically to the vaccine as being the cause of the death for that's on there, or to the side effect that's on there. If you already had a heart condition and you had a heart attack, that also is going to be listed on that VAERS site. You got the vaccine and you had a heart attack. Does that mean that the vaccine caused your heart attack? Not necessarily. So please don't think that every single one of those adverse reactions is directly related to that vaccine.
Yeah, I want us to be careful too, because this says serious side effects, and so when we attach adjectives to things like that, we don't know what the definition of serious is, right?
On the same CDC website, though, if you look on it, it'll tell you that the majority of common symptoms and side effects from the vaccine are pain and swelling in the area of the site, fever, chills, tiredness, and a headache. That's the common side effects from the vaccine, and they're not long-term side effects. It's been something that usually will be gone within 24 to 48 hours.
And the best thing I would say to you guys is make sure you do the research for yourself, right? Absolutely. So with that being said, Linda has a question. Can you speak about antibody dependent enhancement? I don't know what that means. Rock that. Does anybody know what that means? Antibody
I'm
dependent.
going with the fact that she's going towards more now about how this was created as far as using messenger RNA and how um, what messenger RNA can be used for. So as far as for vaccine development, this was the method that was used for this vaccine. Of course, messenger RNA can be used for more than just making a vaccine. There's been targeted developments being used in messenger RNA for chemo, for cancer, for all kinds of things. These are directed. Think about if you have a cancer cell that's told to keep replicating and making this bad cancer cell, and we can send to that cancer cell a piece of RNA that tells it, you know what, stop producing this cancer cell. You could stop the production of cancer cells. These things are not necessarily out and about being used in general and widespread right now, but there are a lot of developments in that area, and messenger RNA has been used with some success in some of these areas. But like I said, it's nothing I can speak. I'm not a geneticist. I just know that we test these things and we actually use them in the lab as far as checking for things as well. So they are in development. Those things are being used for development of cures and treatments. I hope that answers her question.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the death rate, mortality rate from the COVID vaccine.
Okay.
So I found this site. I can actually send it over to you. This is the vaccine slide deck from the CDC. So I just put that in the chat. But
Thank you.
they reported, as far as their death rate, I think they said that there were 200 deaths that are linked to this, not necessarily caused by it, but there were reported deaths after receiving the vaccine. And that's in this report. Let's see. And they also had anaphylactic reactions reported in this slide deck. And this information is from January 27th. And within this report, they've noted that they've given 23 million doses.
As of Friday, I think on the 4th. On the 4th, we had that data.
Mm-hmm. So, if you want to take a look, this is pretty, I'd love to give you an interpretation, but it would probably take me 2 hours just to read all this information. So, I could get back to you on this one, but I will say that they've been keeping track of those deaths as they're related to getting the vaccine. But I have not heard of anybody having a death caused by the vaccine.
All right. Can we talk about the different vaccines? There's a Pfizer. Can we talk about the other? Yeah.
There's 3. So there's only 2 in the U.S. that are being used, and that's been approved for use is the Pfizer and the Moderna. They both require subcool, which is below 80 below temperatures for storing them. But once thawed, they have 5 days they're supposed to be used within that thaw, I believe. They require 2 shots. I believe the Pfizer is 21 days apart. The Moderna, I think, is 28 days apart. Again, like I said, they have a 94 to 95% efficacy rate against getting the infection. They're both close to 100%. I'm not saying they're 100%, but close to 100% of preventing death from the COVID. Also, I have to mention the Johnson & Johnson is a single shot vaccine. It has not gone through and finished approval yet. It is still on the horizon of the next thing that come through. It does not require any special freezing. It can actually be refrigerated 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And it's, even though its rate of, that you may hear say 70% of efficacy against getting the infection, is still also close to 100% effective rate of not dying from this disease. So those are the 3 different ones that are out there. There's also AstraZeneca and some other things down that I could speak about, but again, some of those are still finishing their phase 3 data stuff. But up to now, those are the ones that I have knowledge I can speak to. Joe or Dr. Paul may have more information on those.
I mean, I would focus on the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines just because they're going to
That's
be
what's available.
People are going to get at this time, and I would, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine is a someday maybe. This could be approved in the next maybe 1 to 2 weeks. Could be approved as early as Friday, I think they last said. But I think the vast majority of people are going to be getting the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine in the short term, and these are the ones with the most data and most efficacy. And reading through this report that I posted earlier, they talk about that the government has implemented the most intense and comprehensive vaccine safety monitoring program in history. And it's due to what was mentioned earlier, that once you get the vaccine, you are automatically enrolled in a program where you can document any side effects that you have. And just through like a couple of clicks. And for me, I get a text every single day that's asked me, do you have any vaccine side effects? Do you have a headache? Do you have an arm pain? Do you have fatigue, etc.? So,
Joe, can you speak to what you've been seeing in the hospital beds? Because I know you've been actually on the COVID floor.
Yeah, and actually, I was kind of looking at the chat comments too, so I'll kind of tie that in too. So, what's the big deal with COVID? Why are we all freaking out about it? Let's talk about what it does. For a majority of the people, or a lot of people at least, it's going to make you sick, make you flu-like. Better after a couple of days. My oldest son actually got it in college. Came home, he was sick for about 3 days. We quarantined him in his room, didn't let him out, dropped his meals off at the door, banged down the door, said, all right, get your food. And then we ran away and he got his food. And so, I mean, he literally was quarantined in his room and the rest of us didn't get it. So that was good. But he got over it quite fast, but he's an 18-year-old kid. In the hospital, what we're seeing that the people that get sick are getting really sick and they're getting sick fast. So originally they come in, they test positive, they're having a hard time breathing. That's what usually brings them in, shortness of breath. So they come into the ER, they get the test, it's a positive COVID test, and they send them up to the hospital floor. And, they may come in and they just might need a little bit of oxygen at the beginning of the day. And in the beginning, what we were seeing by the next day or the next 2 days, they were on a ventilator. What COVID does is it attacks the lungs. And it makes it hard for your body to absorb oxygen. And so it causes this inflammatory process inside the lungs. And then they swell up and the oxygen can't move into the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide can't move out. Additionally, what we're seeing is it's causing long-term damage to the lungs. So it's causing, we're calling it scarring. I don't know if that's the appropriate term or not, but we're calling it scarring in the lungs, to where they make it through this virus phase. They've been on a ventilator. They've been in the hospital for 15, 20 days. And then what happens is they're going home on 4-6 liters of oxygen on nasal cannula. So they're like, I've seen people in their 50s that were perfectly healthy. And then when they get discharged home, now that they have this disability where they're on oxygen, if they're going to do anything strenuous, they got to crank up the oxygen. They're being 40-year-olds sent to nursing homes to try and help recover them a little bit from the vaccine. And we're seeing some people are getting blood clots as well from this. So let's say you recover, you had a case.
From the vaccine or the virus?
No, from the virus. From
Okay.
the virus. So what happens is, people would get sick. We put them on oxygen. We get them better. They look good. We're like, okay, cool. We discharge them from the hospital. And 4 weeks later, they ended up dying. And they're finding out that some people are getting blood clots in the lungs. So it's causing this this blood clot disorder where your blood just starts clotting and then damaging the lungs. I saw someone asking about cytokine storm in the vaccine with some of the SARS trials. I can't speak to that, but what I can tell you is COVID is causing cytokine storms. The people that go on the ventilators that have the most serious reaction to COVID are in cytokine storms, and we're giving massive amounts of immunosuppressants, checking all these labs to kind of keep an eye out for it. And when you get into these storms, without being too super technical, it's your immune system going crazy. When that happens, it starts kind of turning on your body, I guess is a real simple way to put it, but it's attacking the lungs. So your own immune system and trying to fight this virus is actually causing damage to your lungs in these cytokine storms. So it's the virus itself that's causing the issues. I haven't heard of any cytokine storm with the vaccine, but the long-term effects for some people that actually get this are devastating. Another thing that makes this virus kind of just a what the heck. I've seen 90-year-olds get discharged out of the hospital no problem, and I've seen 49-year-olds die from it. So it's we can't predict who's going to do well and who doesn't with the virus, and it's it's just a tragic thing. I'll see people talking about, well, there's only, it's only got a 0.0 whatever percent mortality rate. Well, the way they die is terrible. They're gasping for breath on a ventilator, massive amounts of oxygen. They can't breathe. They suffocate to death. We try to make them as comfortable as we can, but I mean, it's a bad way to go. And then another thing that makes this virus terrible is a lot of people will not have symptoms and be transmitting the virus. So they'll be walking around, hey, I feel fine. I'm going to this party and that party. Well, they're exhaling virus all over the place. You may never got sick, but you've infected a lot of people. So that's why masks are a hot topic. And I will tell you this: being in the hospital working with COVID patients, I wear a mask. When I speak to any patient in the hospital, if I know it's a COVID patient, I'll wear either an N95 or an N100 mask. And so far I'm fine. I've not contracted it, and I've been doing this since March. So I'm a fan of masks. So Dr. Thomas, you want to tag in on any of that? What are you seeing? Have you seen any patients post-COVID, and what are you seeing?
Well, unfortunately, I've had patients in our practice who have passed away from coronavirus, and it's just a sad reality. I think by now everyone knows at least one person who's passed from coronavirus, either in your town, maybe a prominent figure. I think the mayor of Dearborn Heights recently passed from COVID. We've had many prominent Detroiters pass from COVID. And to know that it's now preventable with a single vaccine is amazing. 2 options, 2 doses. It's really amazing. That being said, just when you have coronavirus, that's not the end of it. There is what's called like COVID long haulers, people who are coughing, who have fatigue, who have heaviness in their lungs for weeks and weeks and weeks, sometimes months after getting coronavirus. And then you have people who develop other syndromes. So I've trying to work with different patients in our practice who have things like POTS or orthostatic problems after getting coronavirus, or just don't have the same level of energy that they did before contracting the virus. And frankly, it's really difficult to manage this because this is new territory. We've seen when people get viruses in the past, you can get things like, I've seen bar virus that might lead to.
Make sure you're speaking to your mic, Dr. Paul.
Sorry. When people got virus in the back, in viruses in the past, there are sequelae or things that can happen after you get the virus that stay with you forever. For example, everybody knows about varicella or chickenpox. We used to have chickenpox parties where we would take kids to play together so they would get chickenpox at an early age. What we didn't know is that chickenpox lives in your spinal cord for the rest of your life. So if you got chickenpox as a kid, guess what? Chickenpox lives in your body for the rest of your life. And it reactivates, and when it does, it causes this really painful syndrome called shingles. And shingles can reactivate at any time and can be debilitating. And then guess what? On top of that, you can have post-herpetic neuralgia, or a lot of severe pain from this virus. And so it's important to know that kids who get the varicella vaccine, they don't have any of that. They don't get a severe infection, they don't get shingles, and they don't get post-herpetic neuralgia. And so when you look at our history of developing successful, effective vaccines, it's important to note that you can avoid a lot of the problems with the virus itself, and then the sequelae after the virus, or the bad things that happen after you get the virus. So I think it's important to look at that historical context as well when you're thinking about pros and cons of getting the vaccine.
So very good. Thank you, gentlemen. I want to ask, we got a couple more questions I want to get in before we end. We got a few more minutes. Is it possible for there to be any interaction between the RNA and chemo or hormone therapy? This question is from Elaine.
Go ahead, Dr. Paul. Yes.
Yeah, so that is something that you'd want to talk to. If you're receiving chemotherapy, I would talk to your oncologist before getting the vaccine. And that should be a conversation that they have with you. Because in chemotherapy, as with autoimmune disease therapy, you're tamping down your own immune system. So what would happen is that you probably would not develop as robust an immune response. So your body might not remember getting the vaccine. So what they would probably recommend would be to go through the chemotherapy, wait a few months, and then get the coronavirus vaccine thereafter, I'm guessing. But that's an individualized conversation that you would have with your oncologist. As for hormone therapy, the level of hormone in your body wouldn't really interfere with a vaccine. Unless you're taking a really high level of steroids, perhaps that would diminish your immune system response to the coronavirus vaccine, in which case you may want to take a break from steroids, but then you talk to your endocrinologist, whoever, or your primary care physician, whoever is managing your steroid hormones before you get the vaccine. So in short, you talk to your doctor, but that group of patients is relatively small. Folks who are taking on active chemotherapy or taking really high levels of steroid hormones.
Very cool. Quick question for me, and then I'm gonna ask Armitris this question. What does RNA mean?
So you actually know what the actual ribonucleic. So you have RNA and DNA. Everybody knows what DNA means and RNA means. It's the ribonucleic acid that actually connects things. It's the things that holds all the molecules together. So it's just, we're piggybacking off of that by giving, you have transfer RNA, you have messenger RNA, you have different types of RNA. And this is just giving the message to the particular part of the spike to say, hey, we're going to deactivate you. You're not going to create any more.
I got you. That makes.
It's all about how your body functions and how your cells replicate, and like how a muscle cell is a muscle cell, and like how this cell produces this. Yeah. It's all done through DNA, part of the gene. RNA. I mean, it's complex. Yeah.
Y'all technical folk, y'all start going into your terms, man. You start sounding to us like photographers sound to everybody else. ISOs and you got 2.8. You got the 2.8. And people look at us like, what? Right. So that's all.
Everybody's heard of Dana. Everybody heard about DNA. Everybody know about DNA, right? Yeah. DNA, everybody, you are the baby daddy. That's what you have. Well, you also have what produces and what makes and what turns things into what it turns into. If you've heard of stem cell research, it's because it's such a basic form that it can turn into anything from there. So We're talking about what helps make something something. And we're just trying to interfere with that information to say, you know what, instead of making this, we're telling you not to make this.
Very cool. All right.
I got like a functional definition of RNA if I can.
Okay, yes, please.
So everybody has DNA in their cells, and DNA is just like the blueprint. Let's say DNA is like the blueprint.
That's the map, right?
But you got to send all that information to the contractor so they can actually build the house to make the materials to build the house, right? So that's what mRNA is. It's the message going from the blueprint to your contractors to build the things. And so in the body, you have DNA, and you use that DNA. You use proteins to make mRNA, and then that mRNA goes to other parts of your cell to make the proteins to do vital functions in your body. So it's the message from the blueprint.
Very cool. See, that's some good stuff, boy. I'm about to get my medical degree. Don't y'all play with me. Is it true? Armitris asks, is it true that J&J, Johnson & Johnson, contains the virus?
That's a longer, how not to get too deep into that one. So it's not using messenger RNA the same way. It's using what's called a human adenovirus. It's not containing live virus, so to speak. It's inserting a portion of the spike of the protein. It's a different way of making it, but it's not containing live virus, if that's what you're asking. If I want to go deeper with that, y'all can hit me up. We can go deeper in it, but
we don't
get a little confusing.
We don't want to go too deep. Linda got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm gonna ask you all to get with Linda offline.
Hold on, thanks, Dr. Thomas. He's got a cut.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the invitation. My 1 hour is up. I got to run to the next thing.
We love you, man.
Right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you much, Dr. Thomas.
Everybody,
appreciate you.
Dr. Paul Thomas's information is in the beginning of the chat. Scroll up. You will see how to reach him, where he is, his Instagram, all of the website stuff, everything. Check out Dr. Paul Thomas. He is a jewel to the city of Detroit. His practice is within the city of Detroit. And he has innovated this direct primary care process where it is not insurance, but it actually serves people on a membership basis, right? So you get an actual doctor who is educated like Dr. Paul for a fee per month that is extremely manageable, right? And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Thank you, Dr. Paul. We don't. All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.
So, and then Sean, if I could, I just want to kind of summarize. I can answer some of those questions. Back in the beginning, when this first rolled out, there was a lot of controversy with hydroxychloroquine. That was Trump's drug and all that stuff that they were talking about. So, we've thrown all kinds of stuff at this virus, and nothing's working. Nothing's working really well. There's no magic bullet to it. We've tried this drug, try that drug. For a moment there, every 3 days or so, we'd get together with the infectious disease doctors, and everybody across the country was like, here's what's working, here's what's not working. Studies are rolling out, and there was actually quite a few large studies that said it wasn't working. So we gave that up a long time ago in the spring. We've tried it. It didn't seem to work. And then I saw something about zinc. Zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C is a good way. Those are good immunoboosters. So, if you got a regular flu, a cold, anything, those are good ones.
So we should take vitamin D during this COVID crisis. So is that true with even taking the vaccine? Just stay on a regimen of vitamin D, zinc?
Well, if you live in the Midwest, you should be on vitamin D anyway. We get vitamin D from the sun. If you live in the Midwest during the winter months, everybody's vitamin D deficient to an extent. So the only way to
that's
get
a building block
D,
for a lot of things.
Yeah. Vitamin D comes from the sun. So if you live in a cloudy, like the Midwest is, you want to make sure you take vitamin D. And what's good about the vitamins is there's not a lot of harm that comes with them. So it's a good immuno booster. so vitamins aren't a big deal. I don't
Let-
know if the studies were retracted or not.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know. I don't know either, and I'm not an expert, but those are some pretty good studies. I don't see all of them being retracted. Um,
yeah,
but once again, that's me speculating. So I would say, Linda, get with Mike and Joe, and Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul has left his information, and he's left himself open and free for you all to ask some questions on his Instagram. That is listed. Please go ahead and copy that right now. You all get all of that information. Copy that right now, and then we go from there. All
I
right.
mean, let me just add in real quick also, just what Joe was saying. Information is changing constantly with this, and I mean, it's hit us fast enough, and we've been trying to keep up with it. But as this thing changes, and even talking about the mutations and things that's changing, information is changing daily on these things. Okay, we can have a meeting on the beginning of the week, and it's totally different on the end of the week. So it's
right.
something, as we continue to learn about things and to see what works and what doesn't work, and put better things into practice. Everybody probably heard about the convalescent plasma. I had a discussion when talking with Joe about that the other day. I went to a meeting yesterday, and our physicians are seeing less and less results with that, and so saying that people who've had the coronavirus naturally, they thought that it would build up antibodies in their system, and thus if they can get them to donate plasma, and we give that plasma to patients, that they would help them to fight off this virus. But we've seen less and less good results with that, and it's something that's been done previously before COVID. Plasma therapy has been done for years, but it just doesn't seem to be as helping with this. So remember, even people who have already had the virus, that doesn't mean you should not get vaccinated. The term of how long you will keep your own immunity is not going to be, right now we have no definitive amount of time what that is. It could be anything from 3 months to 6 months or 9 months. We don't know. But the thing about it is, and this vaccine, just as like the flu vaccine, is something that when you take it, it's not going to give you forever immunity. Let's think about this, that this is something that's going to, a small amount that will boost your system to help you fight off any serious infection. And so that's what it is. And we're not trying to say that this is the end all and be all. It's right now is what we have to fight a pandemic that is really, it's moving fast and changing. You may have heard of these mutations that are around, and by the time everyone found out about the virus back in last year, February or January, the thing had already been here for a while. Just as because we weren't picking it up doesn't mean it wasn't here. Now we hear about the three variants, whether it's the South African, the Brazilian, or the one in England, and we're finding them because now we're looking for them. So you find a case of COVID that's not being picked up properly on our test, and we're like, something's wrong. So we send it specially for a special test to the CDC, and we find, oh, that's a variant. So we have all three variants here in the United States now. We have the Brazilian, we have the UK, we have the South African. They're all here, and they are being picked up more readily. So please don't sleep on this, because even though there's a mutation of the original coronavirus 19, that the vaccines have been proven to be effective, somewhat effective against those variants. So please, data's still coming in, things are still changing, but these vaccines are working. And let me tell you something, if you want to look at data, look how the UK thought they had everything under control until that variant. And then now they've shut down again because it's killing everyone. It's killing a lot of people really fast. And it's harder to get over. It's harder to heal. It's hard. So
yeah.
don't sleep on it, please.
So a few closing remarks I have. The vaccine may not be for everybody. If you have an immune condition where your immune system is lowered, make sure you talk to your doctor that's treating you for that. That may not be for you. If you have cancer, you're on chemotherapy, anything that affects your immune system, you want to have that conversation with your provider and make sure that you guys are doing what's best for you. Some people aren't going to be able to take the vaccine. It's best just to kind of isolate and keep the social distancing. COVID can be anything from just, I don't know I have it, to a mild cold, to it'll kill you. It'll cause, if you do get it, it'll cause and have severe reactions to it and have severe COVID, it can cause lifelong disability with it. If you're one of those people that have that severe reaction. We don't know who's severe, who's not. You know, the vaccine information is new. It's a new type of vaccine. It's an exciting technology. A lot of people have gotten it before it got approved through the, and I did see earlier some talking about the emergency approval. It's still emergency approval, but still approval. They still allowed it to go into humans. So, you know, it still went through the process. Educate yourself on data. Don't just take all three of our words. We're three educated opinions here. Just providing what we think. Make sure that you look up resources, but when you're looking at resources, make sure they're reputable. There's a lot of sketchy stuff out there. So if you're looking at studies, make sure the study had a lot of people in it. 30,000 is a lot of people. There's some studies they put out there that has 15 people. Well, like from Saskatchewan, Canada. Can you take a study with the 15 people from Saskatchewan, Canada and apply it to everybody else? Probably not. Can you take a study with 30,000 people from all across the US and apply it to everybody else? Probably. Were those studies? Go ahead.
Sorry, just what you just said about that. The Pfizer had about 30,000 and Moderna had, and now is up to like 45,000 people in that study. But aside from that, there's 23 million people have had these vaccines. So as far as a large study group goes and diversity goes, there's nothing more wider than that amount. But I'm sorry to cut you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So
let me ask you guys real quick. Hold on, because I saw a stat today that number is more like 46 million completed completed the vaccine.
Now, my number is exactly from, I can tell you exactly, is from the February 4th. That's the data I had from February 4th. I was in a meeting. There was 23 million completed doses in arms on the 4th of February. This is now the 9th. We've had another week that's gone by almost. So this, of course, this number is going to continue to go up. And as we get our vaccine process better in place, it's going to increase by 10-folds each time, hopefully.
This was a CNN statistic that 46 million had been done, all shots in arms, completed vaccines, not first shots only, but completed vaccines. Now, I could be wrong, but certainly everybody should research that for themselves.
Yeah, research.
Go ahead.
Like I said, you know, make sure you're checking your sources. CNN, I would hope, would have a good source for the number. Mike's going off data that trickles down to us through the official channels. So you got to watch those news reports because they take like snippets of stuff and throw it out there. That's why I say go to the information. And then back to the studies. If you're looking at studies, you don't have to be a scientist to look at the study. You can, you know, some of them are pretty good reads. You want to look for a high number of people, like I said, multiple locations. You want to make sure it's in a reputable journal, because studies that go through a reputable journal are reviewed by a bunch of experts that say, yes, this data looks good, and they send it out. Even then, sometimes stuff gets retracted. So, you know, the big study that linked autism and vaccines many years ago was famously an erroneous study. All the numbers look good and everything, but the researcher lied about it. The doctor lied about it, and then ended up having the study retracted, lost his license. He went to jail. It was a big mess. So, you know, you got to read and you got to be careful about what journals and things that you're looking at. There's some journals that aren't like real journals that people just pay money and they put their papers up. So you make sure you look at like Oxford Journal Medicine, anything that has like a big physician group attached to it is a good study to look at. You know, we don't have a magic bullet to cure people from COVID that has really bad symptoms. We provide supportive care. We throw everything that we can think of at it. Sometimes people do well, sometimes they don't. Best way to protect yourself is to not get COVID. And right now, the vaccines might be the best way to do that. So, as well as masking.
This one?
Hold on, wait. Y'all
Yeah.
can talk forever. I know. Y'all can go. Y'all can go. Y'all in y'all's element. Y'all in y'all's element. So we're about 8:15. I know Katrina has a question that Deb has presented. I'm gonna ask you guys to respond to Katrina's question. offline. And her question is, how long after having COVID should you wait to get the vaccine? And I don't know where you're getting these questions from, Deb, but they should be on this call if they had them, right? So rock that. So we'll hit them. We will hit them offline. We're going to put this on the MAPP page. So I posted a link to the Multicultural Association of Professional Photographers Facebook page. What I'm going to do is try and provide a forum. So if you guys have further questions, we can continue this conversation, right? So we want to be able to continue this conversation in some type of a discussion or room of sorts. We will start that on the MAPP page. All right. Also, I'm going to admonish you all to join the Rock That Nation group, which is on Facebook. So just search Rock That Nation in Facebook and ask to join the page. Shadia Amen and Philip Lewis actually run that page and will be the ones that will allow you in. We will continue a conversation there as well. Guys, I want to thank you all for coming. This is just a conversation, right? And so what did you say before, Mike? What was this? This is just information. We are not this is what disclaimer.
We're not your personal physicians. So if you do have any questions further than that, please check with your doctor before making any medical decisions for yourself.
Don't go get all 8 vaccines and talk about them people from Rock that told me that I could take all 3 of them at the same time and that I was gonna be okay. Don't we not telling you to do none of that. This is information, this is a conversation, and this is meant to assist you in helping further your education and getting educated yourself for your health, for your family's health, for your environment's health, your friends, everybody that's around you, and hopefully you make the best decision for yourself. So that is our disclaimer, right? We're not telling nobody to go and put nothing in your arm, but we want you to make an educated decision and take this information and going on. All right. Thank you all for coming. I thank every single person that was a part of this call. Hopefully it helped you. Very cool. I love every single last one of you all. I am available. If you got more questions, I will get it to the right people. Dr. Paul has made himself available. I hope you all recorded all of that information in the text. We will play this video again, and the video and the stuff from the chat we will make available on a page. So all of that stuff will be forthcoming once we figure all of that out. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Have a great night. And to our experts, I thank you very much. Joe, Mike, y'all rock, man. Rock that. Thank you, Dr. Paul, who has already left. All right. Bye-bye.